Do you also read Bible in multiple translations just like I do? And have you ever wondered why there are so many differences in there? Go and try to read Deuteronomy 32:8 in the translation or translations you own. Does it say sons of God or sons of Israel? How is it possible that we have two so different options? That's the question we are going to answer today, or at least try to. Today we are going to go deep into the weeds of the Old Testament biblical text. We are going to look at a particular passage that represents a problem of so-called text variants or manuscript variants. A problem that we can run into in other biblical passages, so it's a worthy exercise to go through. We are going to be looking at Deuteronomy 32:8, a passage that became a hot topic in the past years. There are a lot of discussions around it, and for a good reason. Certain opinions stemming from this passage became known or labeled as Deuteronomy 32 worldview. But we are not going to be focusing on the content of the passage. We are going to be focusing on what happened to the text. And it is a fascinating story. Let's start by reading the verse first. We are using the NIV translation. When the Most High gave the nations their inheritance, when he divided all mankind, he set up boundaries for the peoples according to the number of the sons of Israel. Notice the final phrase, sons of Israel. This is where we are going to spend most of our time today. We are now looking at the comparison of this particular text in multiple translations. Notice that the various translations represent two possible readings of the ending phrase. First, sons of Israel. Besides NIV that we used at the beginning, also New King James Version, Young Literal Translation, and New American Standard Bible all have this variant. Number of other translations have a completely different rendering. Sons of God. English Standard Version, New Revised Standard Version both follow this reading. From the other translations, we see that the Net Bible, with its free-form translation, follows the reading Sons of God, which it renders as Heavenly Assembly, basically meaning the same thing. And Tanakh and Complete Jewish Bible translate it as Israel's number and Israel's population, which are a bit different versions of Sons of Israel reading. So in summary, we have two possible versions here. Either God divided mankind into borders according to the number of sons of Israel or sons of God. So which one? How is it possible that we have two different options? The answer is really quite simple. The two possible translations relate to two variants of the original Hebrew text. So we have Bnei Israel, which means sons of Israel, and in other manuscripts we have Bnei Elohim, which means sons of God. And the story behind these variants, as far as we can reconstruct it, even though with some level of guesswork, is really interesting. To understand the story and possible reasons for these two readings, we should dig into the oldest texts we have. That gives us much better insights than the review of modern translations. So let's do that now. And let's start with Septuagint. Septuagint is a Greek translation of the Hebrew text created roughly in 3rd century BC. And most manuscripts of Septuagint have angelon theou, that is, angels of God. Obviously, none of the original manuscripts of Septuagint were preserved, so we are just working with transcriptions, just like in case of the original Hebrew text. And some of the more recent revisions of Septuagint have sons of Israel. Let's also have a look at the Masoretic texts. These texts are much later. They contain our Old Testament, and they are considered by Jews to be the normative versions of the Hebrew scripture. Masoretic texts were created sometimes between 7th and 10th century AD, but they come from much older manuscripts. Pretty much all of them read Bnei Israel, that is, sons of Israel. Then there is Vulgate. the Latin Vulgate. Vulgate is the oldest extant Latin translation of the Hebrew text. It was done by Jerome in 4th century AD. It reads, Filiorum Israel, that is, sons of Israel. Given this evidence, it is no wonder that pretty much all the Old English translations, such as King James Version, have sons of Israel. But then archaeologists, almost by accident, made the discovery of the century, at least for biblical scholars. They found the Qumran, or sometimes also called Dead Sea Scrolls. Dead Sea Scrolls were written by the community of Qumran near Dead Sea, likely during 1st century BC. So they are much older than the Masoretic texts. This community is sometimes considered to be an Essene community. Essenes were one of the Jewish sects, just like Pharisees and Sadducees. We can't be sure about this particular thing. And in the caves where this community preserved their treasured scrolls, 2 fragmentary scrolls of Deuteronomy were found. First one is called 4QDTJ, and it says B'nai Elohim, that is, sons of God. The second fragment is labeled 4QDTQ, and it says B'nai El, sons of God. El is shortened version of Allah, of which Elohim is plural, but that discussion is for another video. So if we summarize our findings, things look as follows. All the oldest Hebrew manuscripts have sons of God. All the oldest Septuagint manuscripts have sons of God. Some of the more recent Septuagint manuscripts have sons of Israel. The significantly later Vulgate has sons of Israel. And the much later Masoretic texts, although based on earlier manuscripts, have sons of Israel. And this is the reason why quite a few modern translations started to include the sons of God into their main text and are now putting sons of Israel into the notes. And those that did not do that yet at least have sons of God in the notes. There seems to be possible and really quite likely explanation behind these 2 textual variants. The Jews of the 1st and following centuries perceived the Christianity as a growing threat to their orthodoxy. They certainly saw Christians as potentially having 2 gods, and so breaking away from the monotheism of Jewish belief. Hence they focused more on the strict monotheism that was always so central to their faith, and it was embedded in their main prayer called the Shema, starting with the famous first line, God is one. It seems likely, although we can't be certain, that some of the scribes felt the need to change the wording of the text to protect their readers from the dangers of abandoning the monotheism. Hence they decided to replace sons of God with sons of Israel. And let's just be clear, if our theory is correct, this certainly doesn't mean they are changed the meaning of the text. They wouldn't dare to. It was an interpretative move. They clarified what the text is saying. The new reading was just clear, whereas the previous one was correct only if interpreted correctly. The new one avoided, from their point of view, the potential pitfalls of incorrect interpretation. That is, sons of God must be interpreted in some other way than other deities anyway. So let's just make sure no one gets the wrong idea. That was their approach. So next time you wonder about the differences between your translations, a text or manuscript variant can be behind it, just like in this case. Luckily, there are very few of them, and even fewer of them have an important. This one, however, I would think, may be one of them. So that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you next time.